Greetings, this is Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. I'm joined here by Josh Brooks. He is the Deputy Athletics Director for Operations at University of Georgia. And I'm also joined by Haven Fields. He's the Deputy Athletics Director for External Operations at Ball State. Greetings, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I want to talk to you guys about kind of tying in your external constituency, the marketplace, and probably dive into a little bit of internal operations and external operations, because both you guys have a wealth of experience there doing what you do. I'll start with you, Haven. You've been in your job just over 2 months now, right there as deputy. Your background, though, I mean, in terms of internal operations and helping build a football program, you said at South Alabama, and you switched over and you have extensive experience in development now. Now you're there as deputy over external operations. Talk to me a little bit about that transition. It's almost a different mind state when you switch over from that internal to external. Give us a little insight on that.
Well, you're representing the university at all times,
right? Exactly.
But in this case now, there's a lot more outreach within the community. Just when you start thinking about marketplace, you're spending a lot of time within the community. You're spending a lot of time with constituents, donors, alums. Talking about what's best for the university, making sure everyone understands the vision, the plans, and you're just making sure that people understand what the strategic plan looks like, or overall what you're trying to get accomplished.
Right, excellent. And then you talk about Georgia. You come up in internal football operations background, and your transition, you left and became an athletics director, Millsaps down there, and then but they bring you back in. You're in external now, kind of operations, and all that kind of weaved in there now. Talk about your transition to there and your mind state when you were thinking about making the transition and how you made the transition, actually.
So I knew at that time I had a great background in internal ops and in football operations. So everything was mainly focused on behind the scenes things. Right. And I really needed to step out and get some experience externally. And the first opportunity I really had was to go to Millsaps. And it really got me outside of my comfort zone. And it was an opportunity for me to challenge myself and try new things. And that was a great situation, a smaller school in Jackson, Mississippi, where you can try things and be innovative. And if it failed, it wasn't going to be on the front page of the paper, and you could really learn and try things. So what I tried to do at that point was use all of the experiences I had at Georgia and other places, and things that relatively didn't cost money or weren't done at Georgia because it was a big school, but just fundamentally, what could we implement at Millsaps that strategically will work, and trying those things and figuring it out, and just really getting outside of the comfort zone and trying things and learning the external things I'd never had a chance to do before. So it was a great experience for me personally and for hopefully for Millsaps as well.
Well, when you find yourself in these positions, especially you being new, and then when you went down to Millsaps, you kind of have to understand the marketplace you're in.
That's right.
And I imagine each organization, each institution, colleges across the country are trying to find out what is their unique value proposition to their specific community, right? We're here, we probably have competition less than 100 miles away, but where we are now, we are here. This is our place. Let's make sure we're here and we have established relationships with our marketplace. I wonder, Haven, when you talk about coming to Ball State, how are you getting to know and becoming familiar with the various key players in the marketplace to make sure they understand Ball State's unique value proposition?
Yeah. So what I've really focused on is, again, we've been very engaged within our community as the president's initiative. It's part of the strategic plan. Just making sure that we're connecting with Muncie City schools. It's a big project for us, a big focal point for us, and how our student athletes interact with that group. And then we're also trying to stretch. When you think marketplace, Muncie's about 85,000 or so people. And then we stretch you about 45, 50 miles from Indianapolis. So how does that play into all of it? We're spending time, obviously, in Muncie. We're connecting with the community, community leaders, community groups, but we're also doing the same thing over in Indianapolis because we think about Delaware County and Madison County. We've got a large alumni base of probably about 85 or 90,000 people of the almost 200,000 alums we have. So aside from touching the community, we're thinking about how we can stretch to continue to connect with people who have been tied to the university. There's not as much engagement, and how we get them involved for more impact.
All right. I imagine, do you guys see that as a challenge? It's one of the challenges, right, in terms of the place you're in and the number of alums and those kind of things?
It is. I think there's a lot of a challenge for us because, again, we've got Big Ten, we've got, you've got the Big East, you've got the Ohio Valley, you've got the ACC, all in that area. And most people might be tied to a university, but there's still an affiliation or affinity for some other institution. So how are we leveraging that? How are we making sure they know who we are, what our mission is, making sure we're connecting with as many people as possible, constant communication, via email, hard mail, constant visits from our athletic director, our president, even getting our football coach out from time to time, just between Indianapolis, between Fort Wayne, and even some national travel. We just need to make sure within that footprint, we're as engaged as possible, but we've got to expand that.
Right. Most of the people who work in college athletics are pretty competitive, whether they were athletes or not, right? So I imagine you see that as a challenge, like, okay, we're going to compete with ourselves, and we got to compete with all these people out here in order to get these things successful.
Exactly.
Josh, you come back from Millsaps into a role there at Georgia, and now you come in with an expanded mind state, right? You were the athletics director at the university. You had to expand and get out the comfort zone when you were down in Millsaps. Now you come back to Georgia. Tell me about the learning curve you had when you come into Georgia and you're progressing to the position you're in now when you got back.
Yeah, so there's some fundamental things that are relative, and then there's a lot of things that aren't. When you talk about multimedia rights and television deals and things, luckily we've got a strong base of people who've worked at Georgia a long time who have an extensive knowledge. So while I was in charge of everything at Millsaps and now coming back here, you take a little bit of back seat and really guide things, but you got to trust the people that know what they're doing. That, I'm not going to tell them how to do their job, but really trying to find, again, those best practices. Like when I came from Georgia to Millsaps, what did we do well? But maybe there's some best practices that Millsaps that can transfer to Georgia. Sometimes it's relative, but at the same time, like I said, you got people that are very knowledgeable in their field, and you want to trust them to do their job, but try to find those places that you can maybe make impact or a little input here and there that may make a difference.
It's interesting you say that. When you talk about being at a place like Georgia, Ball State, both institutions that have been around for a long time, right? You still have to find the new rocks to turn over. You still have to find, you're still looking for those special diamonds, right? Tell me about that process, either one of you guys, about trying to find the diamonds when you've been, most of our schools have been around for a long, I guess South Florida has been around since the 50s, but other than that, we're early 1900s, 1800s kind of thing.
I tell my staff all the time that University of Georgia has been there before us and will be here after us. So we're the torchbearers. We keep it going for the next generation. And you want to be respectful of tradition at all times, the tradition we have at the University of Georgia. But at the same time, where do you find some innovation that you can maybe tweak a thing here or there without disrupting the tradition that is the University of Georgia, but then carry it forward? Right. I think that's always the challenge.
Right. Your background in development, right, in terms of fundraising, and then now what you bring to Ball State. Talk to me about that in terms of in development. You're always trying to turn over new leaf, right?
And again, as I've mentioned, we've got an alumni base of around 200,000. School's a little over 100 years old now. So you've got a unique alumni base. We've got a lot of donors who are starting to become of age, how we communicate with them, how innovative are we in connecting with the younger alumni base at this time is extremely important. Being very aggressive. Just today, while being here, I scheduled some time with our athletic director, Beth Getz, and I to sit down with two alums in Dallas. Got to be very aggressive. So this morning we had coffee with two alums who had not been seen by anybody in some time. And that was important for us. And as I said, we've got to continue to win our market. We've got to be very competitive. We'll, spend a lot of time in Indy because we've got close to 50,000 alums, but we know there are a lot of people in other markets or in other cities that we need to spend time with. So our approach will be very aggressive. We're always identifying people. We're always looking for diamonds in the rough. If you keep getting after it, you're going to find some influential people who know other influential people, and that creates a domino effect. We're getting in front of a room of 2 or 4 today, and then we come back to Texas and we've got 15 to 20 that we're having a dinner with that have an interest in where we are right now. There's a real interest in what's taking place in Muncie. So that's kind of the mindset that we have, the focal point for us to just continue to be aggressive, not only in our market, but above and beyond that.
Right. It's interesting to me when you talk about fundraising, and you talk about coming from a football background and operations. As leaders, I heard from Phil Eston, right? He's at University of St. Thomas now. He talks about how a leader is going to, when something happens, you're going to revert to what you're comfortable at, right? You guys are over a lot more than what you started off over, right? And you've progressed to this position. How do you find yourself the lack of a better word, not micromanaging development, right? Not micromanaging, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
It was hard early on in my career because I came up as a grad assistant as a football ops person early in the career. I was the one making the spreadsheets and the itineraries and doing all the little things. And early on in my career, even when I was in a position of leadership, I was still wanting to micromanage and create the documents and do the check and roll and bus, things like that. So over time, I've been able to let go, and because at first I felt guilty that if I wasn't doing that, I wasn't helping or doing, So now I've just let people do their jobs, to take a step back. There are people, they can do this not only as good as me, but better than me, and really assume the leadership guide, but let them physically pull it. But it's just taken a lot of time for me. But now I'm comfortable in that role now.
Is there an area where you obviously, like you just mentioned, you don't really micromanage anymore, but is there an area you still veer towards where the expertise you provide is great for the people who are in the position?
I've got a background in travel, things like that operationally. So if I see something fundamentally, and hopefully someone will ask me and say, hey, how would you handle this? But if it's something as little as, hey, if it's game day and I see a piece of trash on the floor, we're going to pick it. All those little things, you're always going to do those things and set the example of whatever it needs to be.
Exactly.
Well, what I would say is where I am currently, it's a little bit different outlook. I'm evaluating a whole lot, spending time with our staff, gain understanding of interests. I've been building profiles to gain understanding of who I'm working with, asking a lot of questions, being educated. I joked earlier about probably taking more notes than I did when I was in college, just because I'm trying to gain understanding of the operation overall. But I think it boils down to what Josh said. It's about people and how we empower them, but more importantly, how we mentor, how we hold people accountable for jobs that they're being given, and at the same time setting the example as a leader for what that means. So it's not me saying you go, it's us saying let's go together and let's work at this. Let's take the next step to be the best we can be.
All right. I'll ask this last question before we wrap. When you talk about the position you guys are in, external relations, and kind of tying it all together, right? How involved are you? You've talked about this a little earlier. How involved are you with other campus constituents in terms of finding success on campus and finding athletic success?
Yeah, I've been spending some time on campus with some leaders. I think it's always important in this role, obviously being what I call a general to our athletic director, Beth Getz, making sure that people know there is another contact for them to connect with, whether it be general counsel, whether it be the business affairs office, just making sure they know they've got a secondary contact as a leader within our department. As I mentioned out in the community, I think community leaders are extremely important for us right now. That is a community-driven area, as we spoke about earlier. Just making sure that people know we got a partnership. We want to share in their vision. How can we assist our community? How can we assist campus in its mission as athletics? Many people consider athletics the front porch to a university. So we have to be influential. We have to make sure people understand what our plan is, but we've got to reciprocate that and make sure that we're as involved with them as we can be.
Yeah, Greg McGarry's built a great executive staff team that all have their individual areas where they connect with on campus. Mine is more operational in nature, so some of the key contacts in business affairs or operations on campus, student affairs. So if it's a game day and we're planning the next home game, there's a bunch of key contacts and we're working together as a team. And we're blessed to have a great spirit of cooperation on campus to where we're looking after each other and we're always working together in concert. So that's important to me to have those relationships because you're going to need them. We need each other. And to be truly successful as a university, we've got to have each other's backs and have the best mindset.
Then when you talk about operations, even if you don't contact them directly, you need to know everybody everywhere.
Oh,
yeah. About operations.
Yeah, because a lot of times we need to solve the problems before they escalate. So having those relationships, we can solve them a lot quicker instead of it,
Well, gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here.
Thank you so much.
That was Josh Brooks. He is the Deputy Athletics Director of Operations at University of Georgia, and Haven Fields. He's the Deputy Athletics Director for External Operations at Ball State. And of course, I am Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.